In the late 1990s, a group of restaurant workers from Sacramento, California created a sound that would dominate rock radio in their hometown and land them on the soundtrack for some of the biggest movies of the late 90s and early 2000s. Oleander's journey from local bars to Woodstock 99 and gold record success was meteoric, with hits like Why I'm Here and I Walk Alone becoming anthems of an era. But just as quickly as they rose, they disappeared, leaving fans wondering what happened to the band whose poisonous flower name perfectly captured their blend of beauty and edge, as well as the allure of the music industry. Today, we're diving deep into Oleander's story. Before we get started, be sure to hit the bell notification icon and put all notifications on. I hear from a lot of my subscribers that they don't even get notifications when I post my videos. I would greatly appreciate if you guys did that. Oleander's origins trace back to 1989, when Thomas Flowers began playing music with bassist Doug Eldridge after they met while working together at a local Sacramento restaurant called Fat City. They enlisted another employee at the restaurant, drummer Chuck Combs. For several years, they developed their musical chemistry while also maintaining their day jobs. They eventually formed a band called Jack in 1995. Some people in the local scene refer to them as Smashing Pearl Jack or Pearl Jack, a reference to their sound being quite similar to Pearl Jam as well as the Smashing Pumpkins.
Hi, I'm Liz Fisher. It's time for another episode of Sacto Active Rock. We've got Jack in the studio, and they're going to be great. So turn up the TV, sit back, pop open a beer, and watch Jack.
Their drummer Combs was eventually replaced by Fred Nelson Jr., who coincidentally also worked alongside Flowers and Eldridge at the same restaurant. One interview with them claimed it took them a year of auditioning drummers before they found Nelson Jr. As the band continued to develop, they added guitarist Rick Ivanisevich to their lineup, completing the core group that would define their early sound. Rick was the only member not working at that restaurant. Instead, he worked as an employee at a storage warehouse for a record chain. By 1996, they changed their name from Jack to Oleander. The name took its inspiration from a poisonous shrub that lined the space outside the rehearsal studio and entices people with its beautiful multicolor appearance, possibly a metaphor for the music industry. It's funny because there were several bands named after foliage and plants, including Screaming Trees, The Wallflowers, and Bush, who were all popular around this time. Flowers told Billboard, "Being in a band lends itself to being childish and reckless. In fact, everyone encourages you to act like that. No one will kick the chick out of the bed, take the straw out of your nose, or tell you you can't fly a plane, even though you've never taken lessons, as long as you keep delivering hits." He added how he took advantage of the 80s decadence and acted like he was a star back then, even though he wasn't one just yet. The band got their big break when a local Sacramento station, KRXQ, started playing several songs off their debut EP, and it soon sold out after that. The band owed much of their early success to the station's program director, a guy named Curtis Johnson, who added two tracks, Down When I'm Loaded and Why I'm Here. Why I'm Here became one of the station's top 5 tracks. The radio station went as far as adding the song Down When I'm Loaded instead of the Counting Crows' Angels of the Silences, a band who had the backing of a major label. The station's market research proved that they were onto something. The station told the Sacramento Bee that in doing market research, Down When I'm Loaded ranked up there with more established bands like Metallica and Tool when talking to listeners about their preferred songs. A spokesperson for the station told the Sacramento Bee, "That's remarkable. For Oleander, there were no posters, no big marketing push, which is what you usually find with bands on our station. Not everyone knew they were a local band." Oleander were also equally shocked by the exposure that they were getting, and they even admitted that they thought their breakout hit was going to be the song Stupid. Oleander by this point had already issued their first LP in 1997, Shrinking the Blob, independently. So interestingly enough, KRXQ's program director Curtis Johnson had quite the year. He had previously worked in radio in Arizona, and he was instrumental in helping break two bands during the 90s, Gin Blossoms and The Refreshments. So when he says something to people from the record industry, they listen. By the way, guys, I've done videos on both bands. The links are down below. Johnson, using his connections at the record labels, made them aware of the band's positive response with their listening audience and told the A&R people from these labels to check out the band. But in an interesting twist, a lot of the A&R people from the labels who checked out Oleander felt that the band's live shows weren't as good as their studio recordings, so they passed. But there was one A&R guy named Tom Mackay who was from Republic Records, who flew from the East Coast to Sacramento to catch an Oleander show in February of '98. It was a concert that was sponsored by KRXQ that saw them open for Sugar Ray. Mackay knew that he had to sign the band. He told the Sacramento Bee, "We were hearing a little buzz about them from KRXQ. Being on the East Coast, we didn't know much about them. But the minute we got their EP, we were excited." After some back and forth, the band signed with Republic Records in July of '98. The band was pretty hush on the details of the recording contract, but it was modest by industry standards and enough to get Pixies producer Steven Hagler to man the board for their major label debut. But not everyone in their hometown of Sacramento was happy for the band's success, something the band referred to as bitter band face. Flowers told the Sacramento Bee, "Nobody likes a band that's got something they want. It's so much competition. You want what they have, so you can't like them." Flowers added how working with the producer was one of the most humbling experiences of his life, adding, "He brought things to our attention that we needed to learn. He taught us perspectives on guitar playing, meter, and applications to make us a better band." This resulted in the group trimming down the length of their songs, some of which were supposedly 18 minutes long in one interview. The resulting record was February Sun, which was issued in 1999. Interestingly enough, February Sun wasn't entirely new material, as it contained several tracks that had been previously released on Shrinking the Blob. But these older songs were now re-recorded with major label production values and distribution support. Flowers remarked in one interview to Billboard magazine how the songs that he had written for their major label debut were mostly done as warnings to himself about what may lie ahead. The hit song Why I'm Here was written during a time when Flowers felt down and alone, adding how he was living in a friend's garage. Why I'm Here was issued as the lead single, and it became Oleander's first national hit, peaking at number 3 and 13 on the mainstream rock and alternative airplay charts. The song received a significant boost when it was featured on the popular WB television series Dawson's Creek. It was in 1999 Oleander achieved further success with their second single, I Walk Alone, which gained additional exposure when it was featured in the teen comedy American Pie, though interestingly enough, it wasn't included on the film's soundtrack. Their soundtrack placements continued with their song My Bad appearing in the 2000 comedy film Scary Movie. Also notable on the album was Oleander's cover of the Cure song Boys Don't Cry. The band hit the road touring with Candlebox, Creed, Our Lady Peace, and Collective Soul, in addition to playing the ill-fated Woodstock 99 to promote their major label debut. Following the success of February Sun, Oleander returned in 2001 with their second major label album, Unwind. Prior to its release, Flowers described Unwind as being harder than his predecessor, yet more diverse, with what he described as some extra instrumentation that doesn't make it feel too hardcore. In a later interview, Flowers noted that this musical diversity was consistent throughout their catalog, adding, "We have always been that way if you go back and listen to our older records. We've never limited ourselves by saying no to a certain song that might not fit a genre. We always felt that the more formats of radio that we can fit into, the better, and if it is a quality song, we will roll with it." The single Are You There peaked at number 6 and 19 on the mainstream rock and alternative airplay charts. The album was also notable for the track Champion, which got some radio play and connected strongly with listeners. The song took an unexpected additional significance following the 9/11 attacks, as it became associated with the sacrifice of firefighters during the tragedy. The idea initially was for the band to take sales of the single and donate it to a relief fund. Flowers remarked in 2003, "Our intentions definitely were good to submit something to the relief fund. Unfortunately, later on, I saw them for like 25 cents a copy. I see them on eBay for like a penny. I'm like, man, how much is really going to the fund?" It just didn't fly, and it was endemic of that whole album actually. This record represented their final release for Republic Records. During this time, the song Bruised was featured exclusively in American Pie 2, while Jimmy Shaker Day was featured in the 2002 blockbuster Spider-Man. By 2003, the musical landscape was shifting significantly, with post-grunge giving way to new sounds in rock music, and the industry itself was undergoing substantial changes thanks to file-sharing sites. Eldridge told the Sacramento Bee, "It was a very scary time. There was a lot of uncertainty about exactly what was going to happen to our careers. We were incredibly hungry because of that, and maybe a little jaded and a little angry as well." The band added that their experience being signed to a major label made them feel like they'd aged 15 years in just a short period of time. Eldridge added, "It's a ruthless business. I'm not saying Universal turned their backs on us, but you hear about bands selling 4 million records as being dead in the water, they can turn their back on you really quick." Without a label, the band continued to write new songs, and they were adamant that they had no interest in following what was popular at the time. Oleander found a new home at Sanctuary Records, where they released their follow-up album Joyride in 2003. This album marked something of a stylistic shift for the group, as Flowers later described it as, "I think Joyride was the only straightforward, cohesive rock album we did. The rest were very diverse." Despite the critical acknowledgement, the album didn't return Oleander to the level of national popularity they'd previously achieved with February Sun. This commercial reality reflected the challenges many rock bands faced in the early 2000s as the industry and radio formats continued to evolve and fragment. Flowers shed some more light on some of the issues they had with their label at the time, telling Cryptic Rock, "Joyride was an album we were extremely proud of and very much looking forward to it being released. A perfect example of things not being in control once we delivered it to the label. At the time, the marketing and managing of it was blown. It just didn't see the light of day." The album had a modest hit with Hands Off the Wheel, which peaked at number 25 on the mainstream rock tracks chart. But personnel changes combined with the challenges of promoting an album on a new label, as well as a changing industry landscape, created the perfect storm of circumstances that ultimately led to the band taking a break. In interviews about this period, Flowers later explained that the band wasn't having fun anymore and simply felt burned out from the constant grind of touring and recording, in addition to not being able to make back a lot of the money that they'd spent making their records. Despite their official break, the band members continued their creative connections, continuing to exchange musical ideas informally through their time apart. Flowers later explained in an interview, "We've pretty much been sharing ideas since that day that we officially started on that break. We never really ended the writing process. We really slowed everything down." In 2009, after several years away from the spotlight, Oleander began the process of reuniting and working towards new music together. Rather than rushing back into the studio, the band took a measured approach to their return. Flowers described the band's mindset during this period, stating, "We had taken enough time away to build up some life experiences to draw upon." After several years of writing and preparation, Oleander released their fifth and most recent studio album, Something Beautiful, in April of 2013. Oleander worked with Rich Mauser, who had been collaborating with the band for many years as a producer, and he now joined the group as a full-time member on guitar. The production process for Something Beautiful was quite different from their earlier albums, with the band taking full advantage of their independence from major label deadlines and expectations. Flowers explained, "With this go-around, we had all the time in the world and zero pressures from outside influences to record this album, so we took full advantage. We recorded this album over the course of about a year and a half. We did it a few songs at a time. We spent whatever time we felt was necessary to give each song the attention that they deserved." The band's lineup for this comeback phase included Thomas Flowers on vocals, Doug Eldridge on bass, Rick Ivanisevich on guitar, and Steve Brown on drums, and Rich Mauser on guitar. That does it for today's video, guys. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again on Rock World True Stories. Take care.